Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I want to work on styling a little bit. Up to this point with our PCM, we've been using Prairie HR Solutions branding colors here, this dark blue and this light, or this dark brown and this light brown. And I want to show you, if you're following along and creating one of your own or taking bits and pieces or whatnot, I want to show you briefly how to modify the colors as we did in here. Now, this isn't going to be a full blown CSS types episode because in order to get CCS down pat, we're going to have to do a series in itself. If you would like me to do one, please just send us an email and we'll put one together and post it online. But for now, we're just going to tackle certain colors. That way you'll know which or how to modify the colors if you so choose. Now, before I get started into this, I want to look at what we really want to change. So we want to modify the border. We can do these backgrounds here and maybe the spans here that are light brown. So we'll just start at the top and work our way through it. Now, I think we need to start by looking at a base color. So our base color here looks to be this, well, it doesn't look to be, it is. It's this dark brownish color here. And then the accents, or the ones that, are secondary, are these light brown. And then we also have the light brown effect around the borders here. And I went in, and instead of having this, if you haven't watched my previous videos, please go back and watch those, because we had a field here that was set to block or none, and then that would contain the information for that section. And since we did our previous video, we created this modal. Okay, let's open it up. This modal that pops up, what I did is I just used this modal to create those instructions. So we're also going to want to change this color. So let's go look at how we can change our base color. So when we come in here to our code in our page, what we're really doing is we're overriding what Bootstrap has by default. They have a nice color scheme. It's, looks good, but there are times that we want to change it, maybe to our own companies. And what we were really grabbing were these classes. And if you can see, we had this recDD that we added in order to grab our certain information and run our functions. And then we also have this form select. Now, you could download Bootstrap's entire CSS file and then look to see how they're assigning things, or what we can do is simply override it. So if we go over here to our home CSS, you'll see that in some of these, we have this exclamation point important. And what that's doing is it's saying that this is important enough to override what was previously there. And since we're working in a page, if you remember from one of our previous episodes, we created different views, and the different views were, it was a URL, and then it had a question mark, and then we put a P, and there'll be a future video in here once we start expanding this piece, this PCM, because we're going to have to create different pages. So that one's coming up, but we have this operations piece, and that's what this field is. It contains the operations as well as, or the record management, as well as our compliance. Now, if we were to go in and go to something, say like compensation, that would be a completely different view or page, so to speak. And we may or may not want the color scheme to remain the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here. And as you can see, this is a home CSS, which means that it goes to our home page here. And how we're accessing this home CSS is, instead of putting the style tags all right here, we're calling Bootstrap, and then we're using this function that we built inside our utilities file to grab or link to this home CSS. So we can do this pretty much the same thing for our operations page. So let's just create a new HTML file. And let's go down to where that file is, and let's call this operations CSS. And there we go. Now what we can do is we can come up to our home CSS and simply grab this style tag, this whole piece here, copy it. Now remember, this is already an HTML file. We are not rendering it as an entire page. We're just wanting the style piece. So all we need is everything in between the style tags. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change this, because when we go over here to our operations page, notice that we're calling up here in our header, we're calling our home CSS. And we don't want to call our home CSS this time. We want to call our operations CSS. So let's change this. And what that's going to do is it's not going to link this. So this CSS file can be vastly different from our operations CSS file. And that's really what we want. So then we saved it. Let's go back and refresh it to show that nothing changed. As you can see, it looks still the same here. Yep. So everything's still the same. It's just now being linked to a different file. So now let's start playing with this. I'd like to change this dark brown to maybe an off blue, sort of a grayish blue. And what I can do is, if you don't have an HTML or RGA or RGB or hex color scheme with the codes, you can simply go to an internet search and find those, and then you can find what color you want. So I went ahead and I have a wheel here, and you'll notice that our background colors are actually this hashtag followed by 6 characters. And what this is this is hex code. This is a hex. So these control our colors, and this is that dark brown. This number 551E19 is a dark brown. Now, if I was just doing this kind of standalone, sort of just sitting down and coding like crazy to create something, I would have put this in what's called a root CSS file, just so we don't have all of this. But it's good. This is good for instructional purposes, and maybe if we do a CSS video, we'll talk about roots. So this is that brown color. So let's change this brown color to a different color. And the color that I'm wanting is, you got to start off with a hashtag. Is that color. And the color is FFF, which is basically pure white. So let's save this. And before we go back, I want to say the greatest, at least this has worked for me, how I truly learned CSS, JavaScript, and Google Apps Script was by taking snippets of code, which you have here with, our PCM, and then changing things to see how how they work or what it does. And then that way I was able to learn really the basics on how things were interacting. And then on top of that, then I started learning more complex things like those maps, the filters, these different views. So I was able to take a sample and then modify it to see what was actually happening. And I know it goes against how we typically learn, where we sit in a classroom or we do hands-on, and someone's over your shoulder doing that. I mean, that works fine, but really, if you're not going that route or have the dedicated resources, essentially, just like with this code, borrow with pride and then play around with it and change things to see how it works and what those do. Okay, so let's come back here. Now you'll notice that what we changed was our modal header and our modal footer. So since we have the dot here, these are the classes. So we changed the header and the footer to that color. So let's go see if we like that color. If you don't like that color, you can always, speak up, shout out, leave great comments or something like that. But let's give it a shot. Let's refresh it. Now, you'll notice that nothing else has changed because we're only focusing on that header and that footer for the modal. And there it is, sort of a darkish blue gray. So, I like that. Maybe we can change this a little bit. That still goes to our light brown, which we can change. But now let's change the rest of these. So let's go back over here to our code, and maybe not the headers, those lines with general information, those sections, but maybe what we can change is our hover button, because our hover button, this C56E33, is that light brown color. So let's find something that, we do a quick internet search here and find our color wheel so you can see what I'm talking about. So let's look at this one, and I'm just using something that I found here on the internet here. Now this is close to what we had picked, this 1F. It's not 1E3, but it's close. So what we're wanting to look for is something that would offset that button. Now that button highlights essentially with green, or not green, excuse me, brown. And I'm not going to attempt to even act like I have any idea about these color harmonies. That's, by far out of my realm in industry. That's more communication and marketing stuff, and they're great at what they do. I get it functional and then they can make it look good. It looks like we need something that is that contrasts for accessibility. And it looks like maybe this complementary here colors could be something along the lines of this reddish color or this yellow. So maybe we can do a different yellow, or we can simply do a lighter white. So let's pick a color that is over here in the yellow. Oh, that's a gosh awful color. As you can see, FFFF is pure white, but maybe what we can do is give it a little bit of a tan. Now let's just go white. So let's go back to our bootstrap here and let's find our buttons here. So maybe an outline button here. So that's blue, that's gray, green. Could go yellow, but it's kind of a different blue. Maybe we'll just do this dark. So let's just grab this button outline dark for now and come back over here to our code, and you'll see that the background color here is this light brown, you'll notice that FFF is pure white. So let's just make this pure black. 0, 0, 0. Okay, and now let's save that, and then let's check this records section. Now the records section, when we go back over to, you'll notice this is a period, so it's a class. Let's go back and see what that records section is. And this records section is right here. So it is the span going across. So if we selected this record section and changed the color, it would change those top pieces. And then also our input group is a class. So our input group, or we could just simply do span. So let's go back here to our CSS, and let's first grab this light bluish color, or this dark bluish color, put that in our record section, and then we have our container in our line. That is the DD. Maybe what we can do is actually just do a different gray. So let's actually look at our color here and see what that looks like. And our nav bar, let's keep that brown. Form control. So this is actually our border. So when we're thinking about our input box, next to those spans, this is the border color there. And then this is the fade. So let's change this also. And then let's change our form control, which is our select boxes. And finally, our input group text. Now you'll notice that we have this box shadow, and this, again, this isn't going to be a CSS focused or a CSS tutorial, but what we can do is we can change this because we have our hex here, but then those also come in RGBAs. So let's change these to the RGBA version of that color. Like so. Let's just save that and see what that does here. We'll refresh. Now you'll see it's changing this here. And what I'm thinking is, well, that's fine. That's fine. We'll see how it does. You can always go in and play with this a little bit later on. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so that is hover to change. And that'll be fine. We'll leave that fine for now. And close out on this. And then every time you hover, it goes black. And then this should go black. That should go black, 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 black. Yep, perfect. And then down here, this process, when we hover it, should also go black. And then you'll notice that this border here is actually, so we have this border, and that one kind of made it a little thicker, it looks like. And then we still have this light brown here. So let's go back and change that. Let's leave that at 0.17. And then what we'll do is we will copy this to its fade. Like so. Now let's go save this and then go back and see how that looks. And again, this isn't designed to get perfect, because I mean, there's a lot of things that we would probably want to do. It's just showing you how to kind of, there it is, see, how to modify and select and change the colors that we would need. It's just determining your color palette. And then it should be the same with our drop down boxes, which, yep, sure is. And it should also be the same with our calc. Yep, good. Please enter an hourly rate. Okay, good. So we have that changed. Now let's identify how we can change our nav for this view. So coming back over here, we have our nav bar here. So our nav bar can be this base here. And then instead of the buttons being hovering to be black, what we can set our buttons to is, let's just pick, it's definitely not going to stay this way. So, but let's just pick this right now. And what we've done here with our button is we've identified the button tag, and then we gave it an action. So this colon hover means that when you're hovering, the cursor is hovering over the button, it's going to change to this color. And we'll probably change this to black. Okay, so let's go back over here and see how that does. Okay, it's not working, so that means that there's something typed wrong here. 80. I don't think this really makes a difference, but it's what it is. Okay, we'll share this. Just refreshed it. There we go. And as you can see, when we change our buttons, that's potent. We change that color. So really, it's just a matter of going in, figuring out exactly what class or input you're going to want to look at and change that as appropriate. Now, we can also change elements by ID, so we don't have to select every single class like this. In fact, what we can do is come in here and back to our code here, and you'll see that we have one without anything. So we have no dot, no hashtag, anything. This is the input. So when we come up here to do like our H1, that is an input. So we're selecting all H1, or not an input, it's a tag, an HTML tag. So when we're selecting H1, we're selecting all H1 tags. And then the dot is class. So we're selecting all input group text classes. And then the same here, And we're only, this colon focus is stating that we are only selecting these classes when they have that focus attribute or action. And there's another way that we can do it. We can actually isolate individual IDs that we create. Instead of a dot or a decimal, we simply use a hashtag. And then whatever our hashtag was, let's just say hashtag rec. Trying to figure out what one is here. Hourly. And what we can do with that is then just simply set the background color to this obnoxious thing right here, to this odd green color. I'm going to change this to DD for now. There we go. And now it's only going to go to that element with that ID and change that color. So let's save this and then go back over and we'll refresh our tab. There we go. And then as you can see, it selected only this element with that ID that we gave it and ran that CSS. So really, it's just a matter of figuring out your color template or your theme or your company branding kit to modify the colors and fix it. If you have a marketing and communications person that would actually that has this down pat about what colors complement each other and all that, it would be great to get them involved with this. So I'm gonna in our video here, and I'm gonna go through and probably clean this up a little bit and change some of the color schemes to where they're a little bit more palpable. And the next video, what we're going to do is create another view. So we've been working in our operations page here as well as our compliance reporting. So what we're going to do now is build out our compensation view. So to do that, we're going to have to change our code, go into our code here and play around with our views in our do get here. So until next time, I hope you're enjoying our video and please take care.